And meanwhile, counterfeit vaccine cards for sale on the dark web. Fox 2's Roop Raj with the latest on this growing scam.
It's a moment of celebration for the people getting it. And yes, thousands of people a day on social media showing off their vaccination cards. They're getting as much play as the I voted stickers did in November. But there's something you need to keep in mind.
On the dark web, we saw vaccines for sale. Then we saw vaccination cards for sale. And now we're seeing even things of COVID testing documentation being for sale. So what's happening is this information is being used and being sold. So what basically we want to make sure is that folks are aware that this type of events are going on, and to think twice about posting any information relative to their vaccine status.
That's Mark Ostrowski with Checkpoint Software Technologies. Take a look at what Mark is talking about. Actual vaccination cards posted on social media, ripped off, redone, and being sold online.
What we see on the dark web is that we see these forged documents being sold. So typically a transfer of Bitcoin or other cryptocurrency is how they can monetize these fake documents.
Who are the customers? People who don't want to get the vaccine, but want to make sure they're ready to get back to life in the new normal.
It's consumers or people like you and I who may not have their vaccine yet, that are looking for documents perhaps to use to board a plane or to gain entry to an event. So it's sort of the consumer side looking for forged documents more than a scammer looking to take hold of documents themselves.
The people selling these cards aren't necessarily looking for a trail for identity theft. Instead, they're looking to make cash off the COVID cards. Replace the name, and you have a lot of pertinent information: the format of the card, the vaccination type, the location or status. These can be used anywhere where the COVID passport is needed. For the people selling these, it's big money, just based on sheer volume.
So in this scenario, you're talking about hundreds of millions of people, right, going through the vaccination process across the United States. It's a big pool for them to be able to take advantage of and to try to gain some monetary gain off of something like this.
And so while these vaccination cards are sitting on the dark web ready to be sold, there is another risk of posting too much information. That has to do with putting together a digital puzzle. If you have your name and the name of the hospital that you get care at, those are just two pieces of the puzzle. Why give that out? Experts say try to keep that as private as you can, and perhaps just post a sticker saying you've just been vaccinated. It's a lot safer. Roop Raj, Fox 2 News.
And Roop, we can't get enough of you, so we're going to bring you in live right now. Thanks for being with us. This is such an interesting story. I was talking with my producer about this, and I feel like this is definitely a growing scam that is picking up a lot of speed here. I want to talk to you a little bit about how legit this is. Do those actually pass through?
Well, it's an interesting test, and all of this is so new. I find it so interesting. And by the way, it's so good to be with you as usual. I love talking to you, all of you at NewsNOW. But I think it's an interesting thing because, we call this a novel virus. Remember when this all first came out last year? Well, with a novel virus come very novel issues and novel problems. And one of the byproducts, these scammers, we saw it with PPE. Now we're seeing it with these cards. But here's how legit it can be. It isn't as though they're going to take the card and somehow find a way to pretend that they're you necessarily. Instead, they're going to try to take your name out, put their name in, and have legitimate information that surrounds that name that they put in that looks real. For instance, if I got my vaccine yesterday, so I went and I got a card. Well, even if I was to take my name off, it has the names of the doses, how the doctors reference them, the name of the medical organization, and all of that put together with your name and then your driver's license, and you bring it out and you say, okay, I want to go to the concert. Here's my vaccination card. It's a very hard thing to look at. It's not like a dollar bill where you can hold it up to the light and say, okay, this is counterfeit. These are pieces of paper. These are plastic cards. And so I think it's just an interesting story all the way around, as you pointed out, and definitely a weird conundrum.
Right, and that brings me into the next topic of conversation, these vaccine passports. There's a lot of talk about that. So is there a difference between these vaccine cards and vaccine passports, or is it pretty much the same thing, and that's going to be another scam on the dark web?
No, you're right. You know what? These cards, these vaccine cards are very much exactly what you're talking about. The name that they're calling them now are these passports. Right now, they're cards. They're little cards that you get when you get your vaccine. They look like mini 3x5 cards, but they're not 3x5. They're smaller. But these cards basically are, they have all that information on it. That then becomes your passport when things reopen again to get back into society. One of the things that they'll tell you when you get your vaccine is, hey, make sure that whatever you do not get rid of this card. So my wife and I, put the cards, they give us these little passport holders, and we stuck them in there and we put them in a drawer, because we know that when it comes time to maybe fly or go to a concert or go to a show or go anywhere where it's going to be crowded, we have to have them. So the card essentially is the passport. And it is a very, very difficult thing, because the dark web, the folks on there, you're not on the dark web, right? I'm not on the dark web. But the people who are excited about this because they get all kinds of information they can load up on there.
And at one point during the pandemic, we saw issues with price gouging, with all the PPE and whatnot. But there's repercussions for that. Are there repercussions for people who are putting these counterfeit vaccine cards online?
That's a great question. I just would invite anyone to figure out exactly how they're going to track them down. I think the person who pretends that there's someone they're not could probably get in trouble, I would imagine. At least the least penalty would be being kicked out or not being able to, get into that concert or that venue. But I think that the danger when it comes to the person who's on the dark web, who's collecting these cards, that is a criminal enterprise, and I'm sure the feds would be very interested to know who these people are. At least you could get them for, identity theft or fraud or something like that, I would imagine. However, I think the real danger is going to be, look, if you pretend that you got a card that you didn't actually get, it depends what else you're signing. If you're signing, paperwork that says, yes, everything that I'm about to tell you is true, and then you present that to, let's say, an airline, and then you use a fake ID of any sort, whether it be a passport or an ID, I would imagine there are repercussions there as well. But as I said, Daytona, these are interesting times, a novel virus with novel problems that are springing up.
Roop Raj out there in Detroit, always giving us the best stories here. We appreciate you being here on News Now.
Good to see you. We'll see you around.
We'll see you around. And we're going to go back.